Hello and welcome to another episode of InvestPower. I'm David and today I'd like to talk about some fundamental books which shaped my investment mindset back in my early days. So I want to talk about 3 books today, and to me they're like the Bibles of investing, not purely just on property, and you'll see from those 3 books from the titles that they're not purely about investing in property, but in general across the investment mindset which built up over the years. Okay, so let's have a look at these 3 titles today. So the first title is Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I think everyone is quite familiar with this title already, and also quite familiar with Robert Kiyosaki's story. What this book really tells us about is the 4 quadrants, the cash flow quadrant. How do you move from the working class into creating a passive income stream so that that can fund your retirement? So instead of trading your time for money, how do you actually trade money to make money? I think that's one of the most important concepts that it told me within the book. And really what I got out of it is it got me thinking, okay, well, how can I actually trade less of my time to make more money? And also how can I use the money that I currently have on hand to invest? In other words, what type of assets that I can invest in order to make money? So this really sparked my world about investing. So it's one of my first investment books, and after I read it a couple times, it really set the stone for my basic investing, and it got me thinking, how can I create this passive income stream? So to me, that's really got me into the investing world. Okay, so that's Rich Dad, Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki. If you haven't read it yet, you can find it online, you can find it on various places. Okay, so make sure you check it out. Okay, book number 2, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olsen. What does this book talk about? Okay, well, this book is all talking about compounding effect. How can you get to compounding effect? Now, you need to be able to do a very simple thing consistently over and over and over a period of time in order to be able to get the compounding effect. We all know what an exponential graph looks like. It goes like this, right? So in the first half of the section, you literally don't see much of a result. Okay, it's very, very flat. But after you keep doing it, repeating the same thing over and over again, it then comes up with the exponential effect. So that happens across multiple facets of life. Okay, so how does it apply to my early days? Well, after I read this book, I was also reading, I was dedicating an hour, 2 hours every day to be able to educate myself and fill my knowledge with property investing. For example, reading property investing books, or reading online forums, or listening to podcasts. So I don't do that just, once or twice every week. I dedicate every day, whether it's Monday or whether it's Wednesday, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, I dedicate every day an hour or 2 minimum to actually educate myself. So over time, it goes exponentially. So that to me is how I gain my property investing knowledge today, is by dedicating all that time and accumulate and educate myself. So The Slight Edge taught me that big lesson. If I want to be successful in everything in life, I need to make sure I do things consistently so I can then reap the compounding effect reward. Book number 3, Building Wealth Through Investment Property by Jane Somers. This is probably one of the most classical title in the Australian property market history in terms of books, and also it's actually one of the first investment property books that I read about in my property journey. Okay, so what it really talks about is, in a very simple term, how can you invest and what can you invest, and why you should create wealth and build your wealth over a long period of time. Because the book talks about, based on the historical data, overall the Australian property asset across a long period of time is still very robust and trending up. Okay, so that's why it basically builds on the foundation that don't buy property for short-term trading. It's very different to shares. Shares you want to buy low and sell high, and that could be in a matter of months. But in property, if you try to do that, then you're very prone to selling at a loss. Okay, so James Sommer's concept is that you should look for decent asset classes like property, buy them and afford them, hold them for a long-term period of time, and when it grows, you can use the equity of that property again and to be able to build more of your portfolio so that when you retire, you've got a nest egg to retire on. Very simple, very easy, no financial jargon whatsoever. So I think it's a great book for all investors looking at getting into Australian market property, and certainly one of the things that you should definitely be reading and checking out, because it will basically show you how to do things, especially in the early days. Okay. Alright, so that's a quick wrap for today. Basically, these 3 titles: Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olsen, and Building Wealth Through Investment Property by James Somers. Hopefully these are the books that you have read. If you haven't read them yet, I strongly recommend you to check them out because it really has changed and set the foundation of my investment philosophy back in the days, okay? So I hope you liked today's video. Don't forget to click on the like button. Otherwise, comment below if you've got any questions, and I will see you guys in next week's InvestPower episode.